Welcome back to Weights and Wealth. We have an episode that is going to be mainly my co-host Nick today. He's going to talk all about taxes, everything you need to know for filing your own taxes through QuickBooks or TurboTax or however you're doing it. He's going to give you a lot of tips and tricks so that you can maximize your return, or at least maybe not get some letters from the IRS. So we'll go through that. First, we've got some housekeeping. We'd like to shout out a listener. We're going to start doing this every episode. So if you listen and leave a review on any of our platforms, you might get a shout out at the beginning of the episode. Today, we've got Jeff from Rochester. And Jeff said, "I like your focus on core principles that span across fitness, finance, and functionality. Keep up the good work. Before you know it, you are going to inspire me to bulk up and shred." Good job, Jeff. We'd like to see that happen.
And we're also announcing the first winner of our Starbucks gift card, Juan Hair Cadena. So congratulations. And to enter this drawing, you have to either restory us on Instagram and tag us, leave a review, tell a friend, and just let us know. Really just interact with our podcast in any way.
Yeah, as long as you share it and let us know that you shared it in some way, we'll enter you into the monthly drawing for that Starbucks gift card. So as Nick said, we've already got our January winner, but keep sharing the podcast, and every month we'll pick a winner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we don't recommend getting one of those Frappuccino, Mocha, Caramel, whatever you have from Starbucks.
It's true. There's, I forget what episode it was, but I had a little Starbucks rant as our producer is over there drinking Starbucks right now. May or may not have just gotten the finger for that, but...
All right, so we'll get into a little bit about taxes, everybody's favorite time of year.
Of course.
I don't know, have you listened to the Dave Ramsey podcast at all?
So our friends Saeed and Chris over at the Higher Standard podcast, they have a little beef with Dave Ramsey. They say to never trust a man with Ram in his name. And I think that's a good piece of advice.
Yeah. I mean, his podcast is really entertaining. I don't think he has the best financial advice. I kind of compare him to Dr. Phil, but for finances, he's very against any form of debt.
Yes.
But in his podcast, he says that tax season is everybody's least favorite time of year, except for accountants. And I can say that's not true. Most accountants don't even like tax season just because of like the number of hours it brings.
You get so busy during tax season. It's crazy that, I mean, I don't know if you guys make double during overtime or something, but if you don't, it's a big loss for you.
We all make overtime, but the summers and November and December are really laid back.
Yeah.
So we get a break then.
That's nice.
So anyway, we'll get into it today. For a lot of people, taxes can be a daunting task just because you don't know anything. I know I've talked to some people and they're scared of accidentally committing fraud. You can't accidentally commit fraud. You need to intend to commit fraud. But it is somewhat important to get your taxes mostly right. Mm-hmm. I think there's an estimate. I think 90% of tax returns are filed either incomplete or missing or wrong in some way.
Why is it so complicated? It's so frustrating.
Why? Just because there are so many rules that, some people don't follow to a T. If you sell something on eBay, you're supposed to report that income. Mm-hmm. Most people don't if it's like a really small amount. Now, if you have an eBay store, you will really need to, because that's something that the IRS could be able to tell, and you could get in trouble for not reporting if it's like significant.
And was it last year that they updated the tax code to make it so that if you do over $600 on Venmo or Cash App, you have to report that as well?
Yes, so that has been postponed to next year, I believe. It was supposed to start this year. So basically what that is if you purchase something from somebody, say I buy some sort of lifting or some programming from Ted, mm-hmm. and I pay him over $600, I'm supposed to issue him a 1099, and that 1099 also goes to the IRS. So that way they have a record of how much I paid him and how much he should be reporting on his tax return from me.
Okay.
So that's the purpose of 1099s. Most people are more familiar with a W-2. That's what you get from your job, which is most people's main source of income. Some other forms of income that a lot of people have are interest, dividends, capital gains, which will all be reported on a broker statement that they get from their broker at the end of the year.
Yeah.
So if you're on like Robinhood or Vanguard, Charles Schwab, they will issue a consolidated 1099 that reports all of this information. And this will all be entered into whatever tax software that you use.
Should we start maybe from like the most basic intro level and then work up? Maybe start with the tax software that's out there for people to use if they're just filing their taxes on their own?
Yeah, sure. So on the IRS's website, they have a lot of free file options. I think the most you can make to qualify for the free file option is around 70 or 75,000. I forget the exact number.
We'll put that link in the show notes. If you go to our website and click on the show notes for this episode, we'll put that link to the IRS's website there. So it's easy for any first-time tax filers to go there and follow along with what we're saying today.
Yeah, and it is actually kind of challenging to find because when I was looking for it, a bunch of, ads, H&R Block, TurboTax, they all come up before the IRS free file site. So it is kind of tough to find. But that's only federal. You do have to pay for state tax filings for a lot of them. Some of them have free state tax filings for certain states, but you will probably still have to pay something for your state taxes. Another big one is TurboTax. They do offer a free filing service, but from what I understand, it's pretty much only if you have a W-2. If you have anything beyond that, you're going to have to pay something.
And for high school Ted that just got a job and doesn't know what a W-2 is or a 1099, what are these things?
So these are tax statements that you get from somebody who paid you money. So I kind of explained what a 1099 is. That's for anything that isn't from from an employee job, pretty much. Okay. It's any other form of income that you get. Mm-hmm. So there's 1099s for interest, 1099s for dividends, 1099s for rent. If you pay, so individuals don't have to issue 1099s to their landlords, but if a company is renting from another company, they'll issue that company a 1099.
And then a W-2 is just from your employer if you just have like a normal job.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that should cover most of the basic 1099s. Is that clear? Or
yeah.
Did that make sense?
That's very clear. I just wanted to make sure that for any of our like high school listeners, they understand like a W-2 is just from their employer and a 1099 is maybe if they have some Robinhood stocks or something like that.
Yep. Okay, so I was talking about TurboTax. They do have the free version, but if you have anything beyond that W-2, like any stock sales, you'll have to pay for it. I think the basic package is like $60, and then for each state that you file in, it's another $50 or so. Mm-hmm. Another option is to go to an H&R Block or something like that, like a Liberty Tax. They'll do it for you. It's very basic. If you have more complicated taxes, you should really be going to like a CPA firm. But H&R Block, they can handle very basic taxes, and they'll be a lot cheaper than going to a CPA firm. Mm-hmm. I think it's around $90 plus another $50 or $60 for each state filing. Yeah. And then if you go to a CPA firm, you'll really have to pay them, I think the minimum is usually around $400 or so.
Okay.
But if you do have a personal business or you make have a lot of deductions, then you really should be going to a CPA firm because they'll help you A, file it right, and B, make sure that you're maximizing your credits and deductions.
Say someone isn't sure if they have deductions or not. What are some common deductions that some young people in our audience might have that they might not know about?
Sure. So we've talked a lot about IRAs, HSAs. So those are what's called an above the line deduction. So that comes directly out of your income. So say you make $80,000, you put $6,000 into an IRA, your adjusted gross income is $74,000.
Okay.
And then, so that'll get you to your adjusted gross income or your AGI. And then from there, you can either take the standard deduction or you can itemize. So with the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, in I think it was 2017 or so, most people are taking the standard deduction now just because it raised the standard to it's just under 13,000 for an individual now, whereas before it was like 6,000 or so. And these are things like your charitable contributions, if you for state and local taxes, but that also put a cap on state and local taxes. Not and for your average listener, it probably doesn't matter that much, but the limit's 10,000. So if you pay more than $10,000 in real estate taxes, local taxes, state taxes, it's limited now.
Back for our first time tax filers, say I'm high school Ted, 16 years old. I made some money umpiring for the Little League baseball, and I mowed some lawns, but I only made $3,000 after school that year. Do I have to file taxes? Is there a certain minimum threshold that you have to make to file taxes?
So you only have to file taxes if you have a tax liability. And in that case, you wouldn't, because you're under the standard deduction. So you wouldn't owe anything in tax.
Okay.
But you probably should, because whoever you umpired for probably issued you a W-2 and they withheld tax, so you could be getting that back.
Okay. Personal story. Let's call it hypothetical. All right. Someone I know filed taxes in high school from a job, and they wound up owing $16. So then for a couple of years after that, they were like, I'm not going to file my taxes again because I don't want to have to pay again. I thought I was going to get money. This is a ripoff. What would you say to a high schooler that does something like that?
I would say you probably should have continued to file your taxes.
This was not about me.
Or no, not you, but in the hypothetical situation, this high schooler should have continued to file taxes. So,
all right, moving on to the what you got next for us?
Just a couple of misconceptions. So there is not really a typical refund. I know I was talking to Ted a little bit about this, but your refund really depends on how much your employer withholds from you.
Okay.
So when you get a job, you fill out something called a W-4, and you say your marital status, if you have any dependents, stuff like that, and they determine how much money to withhold from each paycheck. So if you're earning the same amount each paycheck, your employer pretty much knows how much to withhold to get you to zero due at the end of the year. So that is kind of the goal, though, to not really owe anything at the end of the year, because you don't want to have to shell out a bunch of money and potentially have to pay interest and penalties on that. But you also don't want to be getting a huge refund, because then you essentially gave the government, a loan. That's money that you could have had earlier.
Yeah. And when people do get their refunds, what's our Weights and Wealth advice for what to do with that refund?
Not to spend it right away. You should probably put that in savings or invest it in some way.
A lot of commercials for H&R Block or TurboTax or these tax filing companies will make it seem like you're going to get a refund every year. That was the impression I got. And then last year when I filed my taxes, I think I got like $400 back. I was like, damn, I thought I was going to get a lot more money than that.
Yeah, that's just kind of a little marketing scheme they have. I mean, they do cater to people who don't make as much money. And I don't know a whole lot about it, but there's the earned income credit, child tax credit. I don't see that as much in my job because the people that I'm doing taxes for tend to make a lot more. But I think the earned income credit, you qualify for that. I think the threshold's around 60,000. So if you make less than that and you have qualifying dependents, then you can get a refundable credit for earning money.
Okay.
Pretty much.
If someone's in high school or college and they're listening to the podcast and they're not really sure what they're doing, but they go and get the free version of TurboTax or whatever, and they're filing their taxes, but they don't really know what they're doing. You said if they're not knowingly doing something wrong, they're not committing fraud. So people don't have to be worried about making a mistake if they're not making a lot of money and they just make an error.
Right. I mean, you should still try to do it correctly. I mean, especially if you don't have a lot of income sources, I would say it's kind of hard to do it wrong. Like you pretty much just have to enter your wages for the year if you have a W-2. And then how much they withheld from your paycheck, and the software should do the rest.
Okay.
So, yeah.
For anyone that heard that beeping, we're having a problem with one of our cameras and it keeps going on and off. Is there anything else you got for us, Nick?
No, I mean, that's most of it. I'm also somebody who has been doing taxes for a while, so I'm not really sure where the average listener is coming from. So I don't know if you have any questions based on anything I asked, or if any listener might have a question. I don't mind answering, quick one-off questions if you want to message us on Instagram or something like that. But I will emphasize this is not tax advice or financial advice or anything like that.
This is just for your general knowledge.
Yes, this is just us chatting.
One of the reasons we wanted to do this episode early on in tax season at the beginning of February here is to give people time to send in questions if they have questions so that we can hopefully answer those. And we're hoping that if someone has a question and they ask it, multiple people have that question and we can help more people with any confusion around taxes, because I still find it confusing and don't really know what I'm doing. So I think I'm going to go away from the free software versions this year and maybe get some help from someone that knows what they're doing.
Yeah, and like the free versions, they aren't super user friendly. Before I started working in tax, I used TurboTax. It's really user friendly. Okay. It asks you a bunch of questions about your life, and kind of leads you to where you should be entering in your income and everything like that. So I did like using that one. Not affiliated, but I did enjoy that one.
All right, guys, thanks for listening. And as we said, if you have any questions about filing your taxes, just let us know, and we'll answer those in a future episode.
Yep. And I hope this helped somebody out there.
All right, thanks, guys. We'll see you next time.